Ladies and gentlemen, Robbie Falk here, Starkville Daily News, 247 Sports, Thunder and Lightning Podcasts, all that jazz. Here to talk some Mississippi State sports. This is Talkin Dawgs. This is YouTube. This is my fuzzy pimp chair, and we're excited for another Monday night Talkin Dawgs. And it's a lot different vibe coming into this Talkin Dawgs than it was last week, I think. Pretty rough week for Mississippi State. I've got a full reaction video that you guys can go back and watch from Saturday afternoon to kind of get my initial thoughts on that game. And they haven't really changed a whole lot since Saturday to this point. I still feel the same way about Mississippi State as I did after that game. There's still a lot of issues that the Bulldogs have got to work through this week to get back on track here. And you know, a lot of us predicted, pretty much everybody predicted Mississippi State to lose this game to LSU, but it was the way that it happened, 41-14, that really has gotten people a little concerned about the direction of this program now. And this is a huge week for Mississippi State to try to resolve some of that, to make fans feel a lot better on Saturday when they go to South Carolina. And that's not going to be an easy place to do that. And if they were playing at home, you might feel better about that. But this is one of the toughest environments in the SEC. I don't think it gets talked about enough how tough it is to play at Williams-Brice Stadium. And that's a team that has played a really tough schedule here to start the season. South Carolina played North Carolina in the first game of the year. And North Carolina is a top 25 team. I think a really talented team. They lost that game 31-17, a neutral site. Beat up on a Furman team that they overmatched. And then they were in the ball game the entire game against number one Georgia, the team that's won the last couple of national championships. Lost that 24-14 on the road. So it's not going to be an easy ball game for Mississippi State to just turn things around, and that's kind of the concern going into it. Let's talk a little bit about the LSU game before we get into any questions or comments that you guys have. The Bulldogs lose that ball game 41-14, and in some cases didn't even seem that close. This was an absolute mismatch from Mississippi State from the start. They came out, got a first down right away, 12-yard gain on a pass to Justin Robinson, and you're thinking, okay, passing the football a little today. They're attacking that secondary. Looks like the offense is going to get some things going. They did not get some things going. Over the next 4 possessions, they punted the football every time. They had negative 7 yards, I believe, of offense during that stretch. Negative 5 yards, I think is what it was. That's just terrible against anybody, against any team that you're playing. If you're playing Georgia, if you're playing the best team in the country, if you have 4 straight possessions and you have negative 5 yards of offense, your offense is really bad. And that's what Mississippi State had. They were outgained in that ball game 530-201. So they were awful on defense and awful on offense. 367 through the air to Mississippi State's 107. It was the worst game of Will Rogers' career. Will Rogers in that ball game, 11 of 28 for 103 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Jaquavius Marks, he's had back-to-back 100-yard rushing performances. He had just 8 carries, but for 75 yards. I mean, he's a guy that's averaging 6-7 yards a carry right now, maybe. He's been outstanding, but they didn't give him the ball in this game. So they went from running it too much to not running it, and they put a lot of pressure on themselves by dropping back how they did. They dropped back, so they passed it 29 times. They got sacked 4 times, so 33 passes in this game to 21 rushes. So they went the complete opposite direction and passed it too often, and most of the passes were uncatchable. They were if they did complete passes, they were around the line of scrimmage. It just was an awful game for Mississippi State. And to make matters worse, on the defensive side of the ball, Jaden Daniels had one of the best games of his career, 30 for 34, 361, 2 touchdowns. Former MSU commitment, Malik Neighbors, just threw salt on the wound and had 13 catches for 239 and 2 touchdowns. Those 2 shared SEC Player of the Week from the same game. Those were the 2 best players in the SEC this week. Mississippi State's got some big-time issues. They got some big-time issues right now. And I'm not sure if it's something that gets fixed right away. I mean, they got some major issues on the defensive side of the ball in the secondary. You're not getting a lot of push up front. The offense has looked bad. Offensive line struggling. Will Rogers is struggling. The receivers are not really getting involved. It's just bad right now for Mississippi State, and they've got to turn it around quick. They got South Carolina this week. They got Alabama next week, and there's some winnable games for Mississippi State on the schedule when you look at it. I mean, I'm not blown away by anyone else on the schedule. I mean, that's the thing about it. That's what's kind of frustrating about it. You have the oldest team in the SEC, the most experienced team in the SEC, and you look at the schedule and you see so many winnable games, and I can also see Mississippi State losing most of these games. South Carolina on the road, Alabama at home. Alabama's looked bad the last couple of weeks. They didn't almost lose, but they struggled against South Florida on the road, 17-3 win there. They got Ole Miss this week. That's a game that they could potentially lose. I think they win it, but we don't know. They have quarterback issues. Arkansas just lost to BYU. Auburn has not looked great. They're 3-0, but I think eventually here, starting this week, things are going to start to unravel a little bit for them. Kentucky's played no one. They don't look great. A&M is still a question mark. Southern Miss is not good. That's a game State should be able to win. And then Ole Miss might be one of the more impressive teams on the schedule right now. And they have question marks too on both sides of the ball. So all of these games, I don't see a single game on here. Until State beats Alabama, I'm never going to predict them to beat Alabama. But I don't see a single unbeatable team is what I'm saying. And that's what's really frustrating about Mississippi State right now is that you can't go into any of these games outside of Western Michigan and Southern Miss and feel like you're going to win that game right now. So there's a lot of things that they have to fix before that time comes. And, I mean, can they? I don't know. That's the question. I mean, I think there's a lot of concerns about Zach Arnett when he's saying, he doesn't have the team prepared. The coaches haven't done what they needed to do to have him prepared for the game. That's a problem. When you're saying that 3 weeks into the season, that is a problem. You have to prepare the players better. So maybe that's coach speak. Maybe he's just, protecting the players. I don't know. But if that is what's going on, then that's something that should concern you. If you're a State fan. But we'll see. I mean, this week is a big week for Mississippi State. This is a chance for some redemption. This is a chance to show that they're getting back on track. I mean, at the beginning of the season, I predicted 3-2 for Mississippi State after 5 games, and that is still up for grabs. I mean, that's the bottom line here. As bad as last week looked, Mississippi State still has an opportunity in front of them. This season's not over, and they have a lot of experienced players. So hopefully those guys can kind of rally this over the next couple of weeks. But it's going to be tough. I mean, I think my podcast co-host Brian Haydad had State going 2-3 in this stretch. So even if they lose these next 2 games, that's what he predicted. And he still predicted Mississippi State to win, I think, 8 games. So, he has them after that only losing 1 more game. And I think that was to A&M. Even if State loses these next 2, that's still up for grabs for him. But I think you go 2-3, it's going to be tough. There's going to be a lot of, I think a lot of players at that point are going to be kind of disheartened. There's going to be a lot of question marks. I just don't have faith if they're 2-3 that the staff's going to turn it around. So I think this is a big week. I think you can afford to lose to Alabama. I think you really need to beat South Carolina to feel good about the direction of where you're going. 3-2, if that's what happens after these first 5 games, is a really good spot for Mississippi State to be in if you're trying to get to 6 or 7 wins. I think 6 is definitely attainable at that point, and 7 is still very much an opportunity there, and even 8. I mean, there's still chances ahead for Mississippi State. So, I'll pour out that bit of optimism as we move forward here. All right, so again, you guys feel free to drop in any questions, comments, whatever you got. Drop them into the box over there, and we'll be glad to talk about it. And we'll go ahead and get started. Heath Johnson, I think this question is going to be the most popular question for Mississippi State fans this week. and there's already a lot building on this question surrounding Mike Wright. And we actually did almost an entire show today on Thunder and Lightning on this exact topic. You guys can listen to that. It might be up now, I'm not sure, but if not, tomorrow morning that should be up for you guys whenever you wake up. But Mike Wright, and Heath says, do you think we'll see Mike Wright at all next week? Asking for a friend. That is the big question. I mean, I've been of the opinion that each week that his role would increase, and it hasn't. Let's look at what he's done since that first game. That first game, he comes out, he shows you a little something, and it really looked like Mississippi State had a dynamic option there with Mike Wright, and they have just not figured out what to do with him. Let me bring this up real quick. Wright in that opening game against Southeastern Louisiana did throw a pass, but he ran 5 times for 95 yards. In the last 2 weeks, he's rushed 2 times for 2 yards. I mean, what's going on? What's happening here? I mean, we've asked, like, is there an opportunity for him to get more reps, whatever? And Kevin Barbay and Zach Arnett have both said, yeah, there's going to be packages for him. They're not using him. And when he's in the game, he's handing the ball off. You have quite possibly the most dynamic runner at quarterback in the entire SEC, and he's not being utilized. He threw a pass last week for a touchdown to Antonio Harmon there in the final possession of the game, and he ran 1 time for 5 yards. You know, touching the ball 2 or 3 times in a game where your offense is doing absolutely nothing is insane. I just don't understand the use of Mike Wright at this point. And that's why I think this week you've got to give him a shot. He's got to get a possession or 2. I mean, you just can't. You can't continue to do the same thing offensively. I mean, that's the insanity thing, right? Like, you do the same thing over and over and expect different results. That's just not going to happen. This offense trotted out for 3.5 quarters last week against LSU and had the same production, which was basically nothing the entire game. And Mike Wright didn't get any opportunities until late in the fourth quarter. It was just maddening. It was very similar to what we saw whenever Will Rogers was in the game the last 3 years, and they would get a big lead. Or if something was going wrong, they wouldn't try anything. They just kept Will Rogers out on the field. And, you know, sometimes it's good just to change something up. I mean, Mike Wright has 7 carries for 97 yards this year. And I know it's a small sample size, but that's all we can go on right now. But if you look at, we don't have a small sample size of Mike Wright in the SEC. Let's look at what he's done at Vanderbilt. This isn't a guy that is a true freshman or he came from, junior college or something. I mean, this guy has started and won ball games against good teams in the SEC. Last year they beat Kentucky on the road. He had 184 passing yards, 11 carries for 126 yards. I mean, this guy has played in SEC ball games. Last year, he played against Wake Forest, which was a top 25 team. He played against Ole Miss. He played against Georgia, Missouri, South Carolina, Kentucky, Florida. They beat Florida. He had 108 yards, 10 of 16 passing, 3 touchdowns. He played against Tennessee, 7 of 13, only 28 yards in that game, 8 carries, 50 yards. But he's played in 29 ball games now at an SEC school. Played in 26 games at Vandy, 55% completion percentage, which isn't great, but I mean, what's happening right now? 2,067 passing yards, 21 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. And then rushing has had over 900 yards rushing, averaged 7 yards a rush with 7 touchdowns at Vandy. I mean, again, this isn't a guy that's playing, he played some bad competition at times, but this isn't a guy that's every single week is playing against Sunbelt. He's played SEC ball games. So it's not like you're throwing a guy in the game that we don't know what he can do. And if he comes out there and he struggles to pass, Well, Mississippi State's struggling to pass right now. So what can you possibly lose by putting him in the ball game and letting him get an opportunity? So that's a lot of rambling on Mike Wright on that first question, but I do think it's something that Mississippi State has got to look into, and it's not to push Will aside. It's not to dump on Will. It's not to diminish anything that he's done, but State's got to find some kind of spark on offense, and sometimes that's the best way to do it. And this is what I mentioned too on the podcast. This might be the best thing that could happen to Will, is to have a little bit of controversy in the quarterback room, or a better word is just competition. Just elevate the competition level a little bit. It brings out the best in everybody. And somebody will emerge from that better. So I think that's the best way to handle this now moving forward. Your offense really struggling. Let's see what can happen with a different type of quarterback in the ball game with more than four or five reps in the game. And I want to see a possession or two. I want to see a full possession of Mike Wright. And if he comes out there and completely, just falls apart, then at least you tried. But I have a hard time believing that's going to happen, because he was able to have sustained success at times in the SEC at Vanderbilt, and he's got more talent here. So surely he can do something on the offensive side of the ball to help you out. And Bryce, do I agree or disagree with "we want Mike" chants? I mean, I can't really, get upset at fans for that. A lot of people were really discouraged about what they were seeing, and they're ready to see a little bit of a change. So, I don't like booing or anything like that, but at the same time, I'm not the one that's paying for tickets to games. So you come to a game and you do whatever you think you need to do. Personally, I've known Will and his family for 25 years. I've known his family, and I know how hard he works. I hate it for him that that's the chants that were coming from the student section and stuff like that. So that I don't really like. Knowing Will personally, and knowing what kind of guy he is and how much he's put in for Mississippi State. And I want that to be clear. I'm not advocating to bench Will or anything like that. I just want to see what it would look like if Mike Wright came to the ball game for more than 5 plays, and then go from there. But it's unfortunate. Hadley McBrayer, do you think we should have competition Tuesday to see who could really play this offense? Yeah, just same in defense, because we look suspect. Yeah, I mean, I think that's ongoing. I think they do have those competitions. I think they're still trying to find some guys to step up at certain spots. Defensive line, Deontay Anderson starting to emerge a little bit. Wouldn't shock me to see him start to supplant some of the older guys at defensive end. They still haven't figured out the Sam linebacker spot. Safety positions are still kind of a struggle. The cornerback positions are not locked down. DeCam Richardson hasn't been great. I mean, there's a lot of things that he's got to do better. I think DeCarlos Nicholson is starting to take over that other cornerback spot, probably your most dynamic cornerback. And he's growing a lot. I saw some really good things from him in the game. So hopefully he's starting to take over, and you're getting a lot more talent out there. Defensive back, I think you got to get some control in the secondary. Those guys have got to be better. There was guys just flying around wide open in the game the other day. One-on-one coverage was a disaster. The zone was a disaster. They just got to figure it out. There's a lot of things, and listen, it's not all players. The coaching has got to get better. These players are not playing well coached at this point. The scheme is not great. The game plan's not great. The play calls, they've got to get better. And if that means Zach Arnett taking back over defensive calls for a little bit, or I don't know. I don't know what's got to happen, but everybody's got to get better. Wyatt Funderburk, already looking forward to the rumblings this week. Yeah, me too. I'm hoping for a lot of questions that aren't sports related, to be honest with you. As much as I'm ranting on sports the last few days, and I was on some phone calls with people ranting with them about it, I'm ready to move on to some other things. Some like just for a little bit out of my day, I want to talk about something else. And that maybe that's why I'm excited about the rumblings. Ted Rowland, I'm sure a lot of us are wondering, is Mike Wright worse in this offense than Will? I don't know. That's the thing. We got to see. Offensive line overmatched or something else. That's another thing. Offensive line right now is just a mess. I don't think it's the talent. I think the players got it. And we were naive, I guess, to think that it was going to be an easy transition. It is not. And I'll be the first to admit I was wrong on that. This is, for whatever reason, this transition to this offense has not been easy for this offensive line. They're struggling. You haven't found your best five guys. That's been a problem too. They haven't been able to nail down this best five. And Zach Arnett said that some of that is a game by game thing. They might want some more players coming in and out to keep bodies fresh. But he said if they do nail down the five best, you'll start seeing the five best on the field, permanently. So it's obvious they don't have those guys. They're trying Leon Bell a lot at right tackle, the guy that was brought in late on the second signing day out of junior college, and he might be one of the most talented linemen on the team, and he's actually had some good moments that we've seen. They got to figure out the two tackle spots, and the guards have just been okay. Interior's just been okay. They just got to be better at that. But I think State's run the ball pretty well. Especially when they're not facing a stacked box. But when teams adjust to it and they stack the box, you got to be able to throw the football down the field, and they haven't been able to do that yet. But just straight up running between the tackles when defenses are putting 5-6 men in the box, State has been doing a great job at that. They've got to figure out a good balance, a good mix, and they got to be able to take shots downfield because right now it's just non-existent. I mean, they didn't have any explosive plays in the passing game the other day. And they got to have that. And Kevin Barbay has had that. That's what's strange. At Mississippi State, it's just tough to get. Joe Moorhead couldn't do it. For whatever reason, they cannot get explosive plays in the passing game. And they hired a coach that ran a pass-oriented offense and didn't have explosive plays. It's like a Mississippi State thing. I don't know. Heath Johnson, I know it's early, but is Barbay on the hot seat? If this offense stays like this, yes. I mean, you can't produce an offense or defense like this in this league and stay around for long. It's just that it doesn't happen. You look at every single school in the SEC, coaches that don't produce are not around. The crazy thing about this is I really like this offense. I've seen concepts from it already this year. I've seen concepts from it at App State, Central Michigan. I love the scheme. I love the things that it can do, but they're just not taking advantage of it. I don't know I don't know the answer to it. I don't know if it's a quarterback thing, if it's a personnel thing or what, but the talent is there at the skill positions. They should be better than this. Bryce Hall, do you think the defense was so bad because of how much they had to play because of how bad the offense was? Well, they weren't good early, but I do think that added to the problems. And we saw that last year too. The last few years, the offense was just not great. They weren't having sustained drives. They were having, 2-3 quarters straight where they couldn't score or whatever, and the defense just got really tired. I do think that has an effect on them over time, but the defense was never really right on Saturday. They made some plays. They had a couple possessions where they got stops, but for the most part, they just couldn't get off the field. Third downs, fourth downs were bad. I think, what was LSU? Let me make sure I got it right. But LSU, I don't think they missed a fourth down. And their third downs were pretty successful. 9 of 16 on third downs a solid 2 for 2 on fourth downs, scored every single time in the red zone. They just didn't make a lot of mistakes. They converted when they needed to, and Mississippi State did not. State on third downs, 3 of 13. That's horrible. They were 2 for 3 on fourth, but the one that they missed was 4th and 1. They thought they had the first down for some reason. Get up the line of scrimmage. They bring in Mike Wright at that point, and then they have to call. No, they had a false start on that play, and it pushes them back, and they miss on the next play. I mean, it's just like that kind of stuff. Like they just weren't. They weren't in the game. I don't know what happened. Random Yoda, why does the offense look nothing like the air raid? I thought the system offensively was going to be what works and very similar. No, I mean, that was something Zach Arnett said, but that never was the case. This has never been an air raid offense. They have some air raid concepts in this offense where they'll run mesh and stuff like that. But for the most part, this isn't an air raid, like at all. Like it's a totally different offense. It's a pro-style offense built around. There's a lot of zone read, which you can't run with Will Rogers as much. But you see it looks a little different whenever Mike Wright comes out there. I think if you have Mike Wright in the game, I think you can run a little more tempo. You can run a lot more zone read. Zone read changes what this offense can do. And there's a lot of RPO in there that it's tough to run with a quarterback that's not as mobile. So that to me gives Kevin Barbay a little bit of a reprieve, but at the same time, he's in charge of the offense. He's got to do what works. So, it's not like he's sitting here going, well, I can't do this because, my quarterback. Well, make it work. You got to make it work with your quarterback. And it's kind of like a Joe Moorhead type offense right now where he's trying to force what he does offensively on the personnel that doesn't fit. So, if that's the case, then maybe make some air raid. If you're going to play Will Rogers and you feel like that's the best way that you can win, then make it more of an air raid style offense. Run more air raid concepts if it's going to fit your personnel. But we're not seeing that. So if you're going to run your offense, it needs to be built around a more mobile quarterback. It appears. So that's kind of the crossroads where they're at right now. Bryce Hall, were we lied to all offseason about this offense? I feel like, well, you deleted it, so never mind. It seemed like that was kind of a similar question anyway. Tyler Umphris, I think. What's going on with Creed Whittemore and Jaden Wally? Does this slump hurt recruiting? Wally was out on Saturday. I think he was technically available, but he was banged up, is what Zach Arnett said. And he said everybody coming into this week is healthy. So, that's where they are with him. Whittemore is behind Tulu Griffin, and then, sometimes they'll move Xavion Thomas on the inside as well. So, that's kind of a situation where he's just behind really good players. Now, you could get him on the field in some 4-wide sets and have all three of those guys out there, and they need to utilize him more. He is not, I don't know if he's touched the ball since that first game. Has he? I mean, that first game, he looked like the best freshman in the country, and now we're not even seeing him play. It's kind of, we've seen that before. I feel like that happened with Ra Thomas early in the season. He was a true freshman, and then he disappeared till late. Sometimes guys just get kind of lost in the shuffle. Creed. Yeah, he hadn't done anything the last two games. They hadn't even gotten the ball. It was kind of disappointing. 4 catches, 59 yards, 2 rushes, 57 in that first game, and hadn't touched it since. I mean, they got to get those guys involved. You got too many talented receivers. Does this slump hurt recruiting? Yes. If you can't put a good product out there offensively, you're not going to get good players on offense. It's just not. Guys aren't going to sign up for it. They've got to be more dynamic. Michael Ellis, do you think Coach has the fortitude of Saban when he replaced Hurts with Tua? That's the big question, and that's the one thing. Nick Saban's not afraid to do that. He's doing that now. He's shuffling quarterbacks around. He did that in the national championship game. He took out Jalen Hurts, put Tua in the ball game, and he won the national title. That's doing everything you possibly can to win. And for Mississippi State, that's what has to happen. You got to dismiss any loyalty, whatever you have to players. If you feel like certain guys can help you win ball games, you got to do it. And if they just don't think that Mike Wright can help them win a game, that's fine. I disagree with that. I think that he can, but if that's something that they just don't believe, then that's one thing. If you're just ignoring that because you have loyalty or you just made up your mind that you're not going to do that, then that's detrimental to your team's success. So that's what they're probably working through this week. I mean, it would be shocking if that hasn't been a point of conversation with the coaching staff. If they haven't talked about maybe we need to see what Mike Wright can do. It would be shocking if that wasn't the case. If it is, and they're just, I don't know what's going on. But that's what we're going to find out this week. Dwight Schrute. Is this the real Dwight? Do you think Coach Mike Leach kept Will in blowouts just to increase his stats, or was last year's quarterback room that bad? I've thought about that before. I think that's a probability that he did that. I don't know for certain, but you had other guys that could have got playing time when you got big wins, and you just didn't play them. I think that's very much a possibility that he was trying to pad stats a little bit. Chris Parker, our in-game marketing is so bad. Totally agree with the pod. Our entire game day in both football and baseball are so scripted. Zero game flow. How do we fix this? That's got to be, from the top down, and Zach Arnett and company have got to address that. It's not like really exciting at the game. It's the same thing every single week, same songs. A lot of the songs don't do anything to get the crowd excited. You're playing the same videos. You're disrupting moments whenever you have a lot of excitement going on with ads. It's just, it's got to be fixed. And it happens in baseball. I mean, we go to like 30-something games, and it's the same game every single time. There's got to be something that they can do differently. And a lot of this stuff's been happening for years. It's the same game for years. Jackson coaches give Wright an actual chance equals chance will stop. That's true. It's hard to chant "We want Mike" with him on the field. Justin Tidwell, I really like Arnett, but is this the results of lack of a coaching search? I mean, yeah, but I just don't know what State could have done there. It was the absolute worst possible time frame, and I hate to even think about sports whenever you have somebody that's lost his life and his family's going through such a tough time. But whenever you think about that time period, there was nothing I think that Mississippi State could do that would have been, good for their program at right then. Other than just let Arnett keep the continuity, all that. And it was either, you do that right then and address it, at a later time, either after this year or the year after, or you just go ahead and say, thank you for your service. We're going to, whatever happens this year or next year, we'll just sacrifice, and we're going to go out there and get the best coach, and we'll just try to build the program from there. So it was a very difficult decision. I don't know what is the 100% right thing to do for Mississippi State, but I think at the time it really made sense. You had a recruiting class that was coming up, had to be signed, had to be finalized. Everybody in the SEC was about to raid that class and get some of the best players. So you had to do something to kind of keep that class together. It was going to be an absolute disaster of a recruiting class, I think. You had a bowl game to prepare for. It was tough. You had so much uncertainty, and I think the best thing at the time was let's get this under control, get everybody in line, make sure the recruiting class is good, and go from there. And I can't fault Mark Keenum or at the time Bracky Brett for making that decision. It's the one that I think they should have done at the time, and I still think it was the right decision. Because we're just 4 games into the Zach Arnett tenure, and he's 3-1. I mean, right now it looks like there's a lot of question marks, but at the same time, I mean, he's going to be afforded some time to correct some things. He's still learning. That's one thing that I think we forget. This guy's been a head coach now for 10 months, whatever it is. He's coached in 4 ball games. He's figuring things out on the fly, and it's not really his fault. It's the hand that he's been dealt and that Mississippi State's been dealt. So, right now I don't think it's time to, axe Arnett, to get rid of him. There's a lot of things that he still has to learn, and he still has a chance to be a great head coach. And I think that's something that we're going to determine whether or not he can do that over the course of this season. And we'll see how it goes from there. Right now, the returns the last couple of weeks are not great, but he has a chance to fix it. And he's got a lot of people in his office that can help him out. So hopefully he utilizes that, and I think he will. John Kelsey, what exactly does Coach Arnett do now that he's head coach and not calling plays for offense or defense? They talk a lot on the sidelines about situations. He obviously does that. He's monitoring the game and things, just like a CEO type coach would. But he's also signaling in plays, I've noticed, on the defensive side of the ball. I don't know if he has a chance if he cancels out a play if he doesn't like it, or if he just takes exactly what Matt Brock's saying and he just signals it in. I don't know. That's something we'll have to ask him. But he's a part of the game. He's just not calling plays himself right now, I don't think. John, do you think this loss with LSU comes down to something as simple as the amount of talent lined up for each team? I don't think so. I mean, I think it plays into it. I mean, they're the better team. They're the far more talented team. But State has had teams that were not as good as LSU in the past and played them really well and even won ball games. They should have been way more competitive than 41-14. They're not that much more talented than State. Bryce Hall, can Deontay Anderson become our pass rush guy? Yeah, I think so. He's had a good start to the year. I thought he was excellent the other day. I was going to look at his stats. He's been a nice surprise. 6 tackles, tackle for loss, half a sack. He needs more reps, and I think he'll get it this week. I think he's going to become more of a guy that is counted on for State in big moments. And they have a package too where they're rushing the passer with some quicker guys, some guys coming off the edge that are a little bit better at getting to the quarterback, and I think he's one of those guys. More Mike Wright stuff. Richard Neal, if things continue badly, do you think Will Friend gets promoted to OC or someone else brought in from Power 5 school? I don't think they'll do anything during this season. I think that, it just is what it is right now. We'll see what happens from there. How about that? Joe should have run the triple option in 2018. I think it would have been unstoppable. At the very least, they should have just ran Dan Mullen's zone read scheme. Trying to fit that into the skill set that they had was just crazy. And State, let me see what they did that year. They would have beat Florida for sure. They should have won 10 games, at least. And if Dan Mullen would have been there, they would have absolutely won 10 games. It would have been, a team that I think was comparable to 2014 as far as their success in the grand scheme. Should have beat Kentucky. That I know they lost by 21 points, but they had so many chances in that game to step ahead in that one. Should have beat Florida, so that would have been 10 wins. Lost to LSU 19-3. I mean, that game was in reach. LSU's defense was really good. I don't know if they would have won that ball game, but they lost by 2 touchdowns. I mean, LSU didn't do anything on offense in that game, so I'll say that's still a loss. Alabama's still a loss, and they would have beat Iowa, or they probably would have been in a better bowl with 10 wins. 11 wins that year was not out of the question. I mean, they just flat out blew it with the play calling and how they utilized that offense. Rodney Rose, at least we got basketball. Yeah, until things start going bad there, and then then it'll be the same thing. There's a lot of hope, though, in basketball, and I think those two teams are going to be really good. Bryce Hall, should they play Isaac Smith more as well? Yeah, and I think he's going to play a bunch this week. A reminder that Sean Preston's out for the first 2 quarters. They received the appeal today from the SEC or NCAA, whatever, and that appeal got denied. So the hit was targeting. By the rule, it was technically, but so Isaac Smith should be your starter on Saturday, but Jordan Morant's also battling there. Those 2 guys will probably come in and out. Isaac Smith, I know he made a highlight the other day by getting run over, but that's a guy over time. He's going to be the guy that makes those highlights, I think, at some point. That was a welcome to the SEC moment, but I think he's going to be really good, and getting him in the ball game, getting him these reps will be huge. Nick Finney, our line of scrimmage got to be better on both sides. Yeah, it's not great right now. That's been, to me, a surprising theme. Landon T, I know folks are mad at Barbay, but Will missed some wide open throws. He did. Offensive line didn't give him time sometimes, and other times he just didn't get the ball to receivers. What will it take for us to move to a premier SEC team? A lot of things. I mean, coaching has to be better. You got to be more elite at coaching. You got to get better players. The blue chip index has to improve for Mississippi State. Right now, the Bulldogs are they 28th on. We have a system on 247 in which you can look at a team's roster, which it's not perfect because you have transfers, I think, that haven't been included in that, but State's 29th on that. And, I think you have to be inside the top 20, top 15 to be a national title contender year in and year out. Those are the teams that are competing for national championships. Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, those are your top 3 teams. A&M is taking a blunder of a coaching job for them to stay out of that, and every single year they keep getting ranked inside the top 15. So people obviously respect them like that. State's got to be better as far as recruiting is concerned. So more investment in NIL, more investment by Mississippi State in facilities, the recruiting department, all that stuff. More money. I mean, that's you look at the teams at the top in recruiting, they got a bunch of money. If you want to get to that level, or you don't even have to get to that level, get inside the top 15, you got to invest a lot of money into football to do that. You look at Mississippi State baseball, look at the money that it has in comparison to most teams in the country. That's why they are considered a blue blood in baseball. Bryce Hall, am I the only one who thinks Colorado's overrated? No, I mean, I think it's just a good story everybody's latched onto right now. I have a feeling that it's going to diminish a little bit over the next couple of weeks. Probably going to lose this week to Oregon. Going to lose to USC, and then from there we'll see. But I mean, the schedule gets tough. The Pac-12 is not bad. They actually look better than the SEC to me. You got Washington State, um, Oregon State, UCLA, Utah on the schedule. Arizona's better this year, so it's not going to be easy for them to win 7, 8 games. That's the schedule. I thought they would win 3 or 4 before I came in the season, but they surprised me a little bit. TCU, Nebraska's not great, but that's a game that I thought they could lose preseason. Heath Johnson, who's the leader of this team, just feels like there isn't one at the moment. I mean, Will Rogers, probably. Will Rogers, Buki Watson, Jet Johnson, Woody Marks. Those are your guys. But, too, they're a little different kind of leaders. Not like super vocal guys. They're kind of like show up and show players how to go kind of guys. So, I mean, Will can be a vocal guy, but at the same time, there's just not a ton of those guys on the roster, I guess. All right, anybody else before we get out of here? 6:30 game time, I believe, on the SEC Network on Saturday night, Williams-Brice. 6:30 on the SEC Network. Next week, by the way, 8 p.m. Alabama. Yikes. Not super pumped about that. Landon T, do you buy into folks saying Selman would get rid of Arnett after one bad season since he wasn't the one that hired him? Not really. I don't think that's going to be the case. But at the same time, that is a point that this isn't Zach Selman's guy. And two, he's not a Mississippi State guy. In the past, it's been kind of understood that, Mississippi State people allow people to have time at Mississippi State. I don't know what Zach Selman's line of thinking is. He could say, no, we're moving forward. I don't know. But my thought is he's going to get time. So I don't think there's going to be a change. Brandon Marshall, both coordinators showed a lack of ability, willingness to make in-game adjustments. They were in over their heads, it seems. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of been an issue for them. These in-game adjustments just haven't been there. Reggie Williams, was that a drop pass by Harmon or good defense? A little bit of both. I mean, I think it was catchable, but it was good defensive closeout as well. Hope you guys are going to be tuning in to NFL tonight. I'm excited. Saints first, and then my Steelers playing at about 7:15, I think. So I'm pretty pumped about that. Going to get off here shortly and go check that out. Again, plenty of stuff going on our site. Go check us out, 247 Sports. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. We've seen a big push on the channel. A lot of new subscribers, and I appreciate you guys for that. A ton of views on our videos, and really appreciate the support there. Even if you guys are angry, it's nice to have people that want to listen to these thoughts and these ramblings that I have. I might not know what I'm talking about, but I appreciate you guys for at least checking it out. New Thunder and Lightning is out, should be, or if not, later tonight, early in the morning, you can listen to that. We talk a lot about Mike Wright and what Mississippi State should do with that quarterback situation, so make sure you check that out as well. All right, guys, appreciate you again. Another great Talkin Dawgs. Subscribe to the channel, share the video if you want, but any support is appreciated. Hope you guys have a great week. Enjoy your weekend watching the game. If you're traveling to Columbia, be careful. I hear it's a great atmosphere up there, a great town, so you guys have fun up there. But other than that, we will see you again probably maybe Saturday night after the game. I don't know. We'll check it out and see what happens and go from there. All right, guys. Catch you down the road.